Yoga Vasistha, the science of self-realization, one of the greatest spiritual classics ever recorded. The Yoga Vasistha is a mind-blowing account of a detailed conversation between Sri Rama and his spiritual teacher Vasistha Maharishi. Yoga Vasistha contains a system of ancient philosophical thought unique in its kind. Those whose minds are turned away from the worldly desires and have become indifferent towards the objects of this world, and those who are longing for liberation will be really benefited by this Yoga Vasistha. The nature of the stories of their deep rooted philosophies are designed to open our levels of awareness and legend states that those who complete the book. Yoga Vasistha Sar. Chapter 1. Dispassion. Sar. Dispassion. Salutations to that calm effulgence which is endless and unlimited by space, time, etc., the pure consciousness which can be known by experience only. Neither one who is totally ignorant nor one who knows it is eligible to study this Yoga Vasistha. Only he who thinks I am bound, I must become free, is entitled to study it. Until one is definitely blessed by the Supreme Lord, he will not find either a proper Guru or the right scripture. Just as a sturdy boat, O Rama, is obtained from a boatman, so also the method of crossing the ocean of samsara is learnt by associating with great souls. The great remedy for the long-lasting disease of samsara is the inquiry, who am I, to whom does this samsara belong, which entirely cures it. Not a day should be spent in a place which doesn't possess the tree of a wise knower of truth with its good fruit and cool shade. The sages are to be approached even if they do not teach, even their talks in a light vein contain wisdom. The company of sages converts emptiness into fullness, death into immortality, and adversity into prosperity. If sages were concerned solely with their own happiness, with whom could those tormented by the sorrows of samsara seek refuge? That which is imparted, O good soul, to a worthy disciple who has become dispassionate is the real wisdom. It is the real purport of the sacred text and is also the comprehensive wisdom. Following the customary method of teaching is the only for preserving the tradition. Pure consciousness results solely from the clarity of the disciple's understanding. The Lord cannot be seen with the help of the sacred text or the Guru. The self is seen by the self alone with the pure intellect. All the arts acquired by man are lost by lack of practice, but this art of wisdom grows steadily once it rises. Just as an ornament worn round the neck is considered lost through forgetfulness and is gained when the mistake is realized, so also the self is attained when the delusion is removed by the words of the Guru. He is indeed an unfortunate person who, not knowing his own self, takes pleasure in sense objects, like one who realizes too late that the food eaten by him was poisonous. That perverted man who, even after knowing that worldly objects are deceptive, still thinks of them is an ass not a man. Even the slightest thought immerses a man in sorrow. When devoid of all thoughts, he enjoys imperishable bliss. Just as we experience the delusion of hundreds of years in a dream lasting an hour, so also we experience the sport of Maya in our waking state. He is a happy man whose mind is inwardly cool and free from attachment and hatred, and who looks upon this world like a mere spectator. He who has understood well how to abandon all ideas of acceptance and rejection, and who has realized the consciousness which is within the innermost heart, his life is illustrious. On the dissolution of the body, the either consciousness, limited by the heart, alone ceases to exist. People lament needlessly that the self is extinct. When pots, etc., are broken and space within them becomes unlimited, so also when body ceases to exist, the self remains eternal and unattached. Nothing whatever is born or dies anywhere at any time. It is Brahm, alone appearing illustriously in the form of the world. The self is more extensive than space. It is pure, subtle, undecaying, and auspicious. As such, how could it be born, or how can it die? All this is in the tranquil one without beginning, middle, or end, which cannot be said to be existent or non existence. Know this and be happy. O Rama, it is indeed nobler to wander begging about the streets of the outcasts and earthen bowl in hand than to live a life steeped in ignorance. Neither disease, nor poison, nor adversity, nor any other thing in the world causes more suffering to man than such stupidity engendered in their bodies. Just as a great ocean of milk became still when the Mandara mountain become still, even so the illusion of samsara comes to an end when the mind is stilled. Samsara rises when the mind becomes active and ceases when it is still. Still the mind, therefore, by controlling the breath and the latent desires. The worthless samsara is born of one's imagination and vanishes in the absence of imagination. It is certain that it is absolutely unsubstantial. The idea of a snake in a picture of a snake ceases to be entertained when the truth is known. Similarly, samsara ceases to exist even if it continues to appear. The long living ghost of a samsara, which is the creation of the deluded mind of man and the causes of his sufferings, disappears when one ponders over it. O Rama, Maya is such that it brings delight through its own destruction. Its nature is inscrutable. It ceases to exist even while it is being observed. Dear Rama, wonderful indeed this Maya which deludes the entire world. It is on account of it that the self is not perceived, even though it pervades all the limbs of the body. Whatever is seen doesn't truly exist. It is like the mythical city of Gandharvas or a mirage. That which is not seen, though within us, is called the eternal and indestructible self. Just as the tree on the bank of a lake are reflected in the water, so also all these varied objects are reflected in the vast mirror of our consciousness. This creation, which is a mere play of consciousness, rises up like the delusion of a snake in a rope and comes to an end when there is right knowledge. Even though bondage doesn't really exist, it becomes strong through desire for worldly enjoyments. When the desire subsides, bondage becomes weak. Like waves rising up from the ocean, the unstable mind rises out of the vast and stable expanse of the Supreme Self. It is because of that which always, of its own accord, imagines quickly and freely that the magical show is projected in the waking state. This world, though unreal, appears to exist and is the cause of lifelong suffering to an ignorant person, just as ghost to a boy. One who has no idea of gold sees only the bracelet. He doesn't at all have the idea that it is merely gold. Similarly, towns, houses, mountains, serpents, etc., are all in the eyes of the ignorant man separate objects from the absolute point of view. The objective world is the subject, the self itself. It is not separate from the self. The world is full of misery to an ignorant man and full of bliss to a wise man. The world is dark to a blind man and bright to one who has eyes. The bliss of a man of discrimination who has rejected samsara and discarded all mental concepts constantly increases, like clouds which suddenly appear in a clear sky and as suddenly dissolve the entire universe in the self and dissolve in it. He who reckons the rays as non different from the sun and realizes that they are the sun itself is stated to be nirvikalpa. Just as the cloth, when investigated, is seen to be nothing but thread, so also this world, when inquired into, is merely the self. The fascinating world rises like a wave in the ambrosial ocean of consciousness and dissolves in it. How then can it be different from it in the middle? Just as the form, the waves, the dew, and the bubbles are not different from water, even so this world who has come out of the self is not different from the self. Just as a tree consisting of fruits, leaves, creepers, flowers, branches, twigs, and roots exist in the seed of the tree, even so this manifest world exists in Brahman. Just as the pot goes back to mud, waves into water, and ornaments into gold, so also this world, which has come out of the self, goes back to the self. The snake appears when one doesn't recognize the rope, it disappears when one recognizes the rope. Even so, this world appears when the self is not recognized, it disappears when the self is recognized. It is only our forgetfulness in the invisible self which causes the world to appear, just as rope, snake to appear. Just as the dream becomes unreal in the waking state and the waking state in the dream, so also death becomes unreal in birth and birth in death. All these are thus neither real nor unreal, they are the effect of delusion, mere impression arising out of some past experiences. The knowledge of the self is the fire that burns up the dry grass of desire. The indeed is what is called samadhi, not mere abstention from speech. He who realizes that the whole universe is really nothing but consciousness, yet remains quiet, calm, is protected by the armor of Brahm. He is happy. The yogi who has attained the state which is beyond everything and remains always cool as the full moon is truly the Supreme Lord. He who reflects in his innermost heart upon the purport of the Upanishads dealing with Brahma and is not moved by joy or sorrow, is not tormented by samsara. Just as birds and beasts do not take shelter on a mountain on fire, so also evil never occur to a knower or Brahm. Wise men also, like foolish men, may other angry in order to test their ability to control their inner feelings. Just as the trembling caused by the snake persists even after realizing that there is no snake, so also the effect of delusion persists even after getting rid of all delusions. Just as a crystal is not stained by what is reflected in it, so also the knower of truth is not really affected by the results of his acts. Even while he is intent on outward actions, always remains introverted and extremely calm, like one asleep, firmly convinced of non-duality and enjoying perfect mental state. Yogis go about their working, seeing the world as if it were a dream. Let death come to him today or at end of aeons, he remains untarnished like gold buried in mire. He may cast off his body at Kashi or in the house of an outcast. He, the desireless one, is liberated at the very moment he attains knowledge. To one who is desireless, the earth, O Rama, is as significant as the hoof print of a cow. Mount Meru, a mount space as much as contained in a casket, and the three worlds a blade of grass. Like an empty vessel in space, the knower of truth is empty both within and without, while at the same time he is full within and without, like a vessel immersed in the ocean. He who neither likes nor dislikes the objects seen by him and who acts in the world like one asleep is said to be a liberated person. He who is free from the knots and whose doubts have been set at rest is liberated even when he is in the body. Although he may seem to be bound, he is free. He remains like a lamp in a pitcher. He who has easily cast off all egoistic tendencies and has abandoned even the object of meditation is said to be liberated even when he is in the body. He who doesn't like one blind recognize his relatives, who dreads attachments as he would a serpent. He looks upon sense enjoyment and diseases alike, who disregards the company of women as he would a blade of us, and who finds no distinction between a friend and a foe, experiences happiness is this world and the next. He who casts away from his mind all objects of perception and attaining perfect quiescence remains still as space unaffected sorrow is a liberated man. He is the Supreme Lord. The noble hearted man who desires of the heart have come to an end is a liberated man. It doesn't matter whether does or doesn't practice meditation or perform action. The idea of self in the known self is bondage, abandonment of it is liberation. There is neither bondage nor liberation for the ever free self. If by perceiving that the object of perception do not ally exist, the mind is completely freed from those objects, it eschews the supreme bliss of liberation. Abandonment of all latent tendencies is said to be the best liberation by the wise. That is also the faultless method. Liberation is not on the other side is the sky, nor it is in the neither sky nor on the earth. The extinction of the mind shooting from the eradication of all desires is regarded as liberation. O Rama, there is no intellect, no science, no mind, and no individual soul. They are all imagined in Brahman. To one who is established in what is infinite, pure consciousness, bliss, and unqualified non duality, where is the question of bondage or liberation, seeing that there is no second entity? O Rama, the mind has by its own activity bound itself. When it is calm, it is free. Consciousness, which is undivided, imagines to itself desirable objects and runs after them. It is then known as the mind. From this omnipresent and omnipotent Supreme Lord arose like ripples in water and power of imagining separate objects. Just as the fire born out of my wind is extinguished by the same wind, so also that which is born of imagination is destroyed by imagination itself. The mind has come into existence through this on account of forgetfulness. Like the experience of the one's own death in a dream, it ceases to exist when scrutinized. The idea of self is what is not the self is due to incorrect understanding. The idea of reality in what is unreal, O Rama, know that is to be the mind. This is he, I am this is mine. Such idea constitute the mind. It disappears when one ponders over these false ideas. It is the nature of the mind to accept certain things and to reject others. This is bondage, nothing else. The mind is the creator of the world. The mind is the individual. Only that which is done by the mind is regarded as done, nor that which is done by the body. The arm with which one embraces the wife is the very arm with which one embraces the daughter. The mind is the cause of the objects of perception. The three worlds depends upon it. When it is dissolved, the world is also dissolved. It is to be cured with effort. The mind is bound by the latent impressions. When there are no impressions, it is free. Therefore, O Rama, bring about quickly through discrimination the state in which there are no impressions. Just as a streak of cloud stains the moon or a blotch of ink a lime plastered ball, so also the evil spirit of desire stains the inner man. O Rama, he who with inturned mind offers all the three worlds like dried grass as an oblation in the fire of knowledge becomes free from the illusions of the mind. When one who knows the real truth about acceptance and rejection and doesn't think of anything but abides in himself, abandoning everything, mind doesn't come into existence. The mind is terrible in the waking state, gentle in the dream state, dull in deep sleep, and dead when not in any of these three states. Just as the powder of the kataka seed after precipitating the dirt in water becomes merged in the water, so also the mind, after removing all impressions itself, becomes merged in the self. The mind is samsara, the mind is also said to be the bondage. The body is activated by the mind, just as a tree is shaken by the wind. Conquer your mind first by pressing the palm with the palm, grinding the teeth with the teeth, and twisting the limbs with the limbs. Doesn't the fool feel ashamed to move about in the world as he pleases and talk about meditation when he is not able to conquer even the mind? The only God to be conquered is the mind. Its conquest leads to the attainment of everything. Without its conquest, all other efforts are fruitless. To be unperturbed is the foundation of blessedness. One attains liberation by it. To human beings, even the conquest of the three worlds without the conquest of the mind is as insignificant as a blade of grass. Association with the wise, abandonment of latent impressions, self inquiry, control of breathing, these are the means of conquering the mind. To one who is shod with leather, the earth is as good as covered with leather, even as to the mind which is full, the world overflows with nectar. The mind becomes bound by thinking, I am not Brahm. It becomes completely released by thinking, I am Brahm. When the mind is abandoned, dissolves, everything that is dual or single is dissolved. When what remains after that is Supreme Brahm, peaceful, eternal, and free from misery. There is nothing to equal the supreme joy felt by a person of pure mind who has attained the state of pure consciousness and overcome death. O Rama, this enquiry into the self of the nature, who am I, is the fire which burns up the seeds of the evil tree, which is the mind. Just as the wind doesn't affect the creepers in the picture, so also afflictions do not affect one whose understanding is fortified by firmness and reflected in the mirror of inquiry. The knowers of truth declare that inquiry into the truth of the self is knowledge. What is to be known is contained in it like sweetness in milk. To one who has realized the self by inquiry, Brahm, Vishnu and Shiva are objects of compassion. To one who is fond of inquiring what is the vast universe and who am I, this world becomes quite unreal. Just as in a mirage, the idea of water doesn't occur to one who knows that it is a mirage, even so latent impressions do not rise in one whose ignorance has been destroyed by realizing that everything is Brahm. By the abandonment of latent impressions or by the control of breathing, mind ceases to be the mind. Practice whichever you like. O pure soul, cherish the association of sages and the true scriptures. You will attain the state of supreme consciousness not in the course of months but days. Latent impression ceases to be active when one associates with sage, discards all thought of samsara, and remembers that the body has to die. O Raghava, even ignorant person converts by the firmness of their conviction poison into nectar and nectar into poison. When this body is taken to be real, it serves the purpose of a body, but when it is seen to be unreal, it becomes like space. O Rama, while lying on a soft bed, you wander about in all directions with a dream body, but now where is that body? Just as a respectable man avoids contact with an outcast woman carrying dog's flesh, so also one should discard the thought, I am the body, even if everything were to be lost. When the aspirant sadhu thinks only the Brahm and remains calm and free from sorrows, his egoity dies of itself. If one realizes the unity of things everywhere, one always remains tranquil, inwardly cool and pure like space without the sense of I. If inwardly one is cool and whole world will be cool, but if inwardly one is hot, the whole world will be a burning mass. I, the pure, stainless, and infinite consciousness beyond Maya, look upon this body in action like the body of another. The mind, the intellect, the senses, etc., are all the play of consciousness. They are unreal and seem to exist only due to lack of insight. Unmoved by adversity, a friend of all the world in prosperity, without ideas of existence and non existence, I live free from misery. Inactive am I, desireless, clear as the sky, free from hankering, tranquil, formless, everlasting, and unmoving. I have now clearly understood that the five elements, the three worlds, and I myself are pure consciousness. I am above everything, I am present everywhere. I am like space, I am that which really exists, I am unable to say anything beyond this. Let imaginary waves of universe rise or fall in me, who was the ocean of infinite consciousness, there is no increase or decrease in me. How wonderful that in me, the infinite ocean of consciousness, waves of jivas, individual souls, rise, sports for a while, and disappear according to their nature. The world which has come into existence on account of my ignorance has dissolved likewise in me. I now directly experience the world as supreme bliss of consciousness. I prostrate to myself who am within all being, the ever free self abiding as inner consciousness. O Raghava, be outwardly active but inwardly inactive, outwardly a doer but inwardly a non doer, and thus play your part in the world. O Raghava, abandon all desires inwardly, be free from attachment and latent impressions, do everything outwardly, and thus play your part in the world. O Raghava, adopt a comprehensive view characterized by the abandonment of all objects of contemplation. Live in your inner self, liberated even while alive, and thus play your part in the world. Burn the forest of duality with the fire of the conviction, I am one pure consciousness, and remain happy. You are bound firmly on all sides by the idea, I am the body. Cut that bond by the sword of knowledge, I am consciousness, and be happy. Discarding the attachment to non self, regarding the world as a partless, concentrated, and with attention burned inward, remain as pure consciousness. Remain always as pure consciousness, which is your constant nature beyond the states of waking, dream, and deep sleep. O mighty armed, be always free from mental concepts like the heart of a rock, though not insentient like it. Do not be that which is understood, nor the one who understands. Abandon all concepts and remain who you are. Eliminate one concepts by another and the mind by the mind, and abide in the self. Is this so difficult, O holy man? Sever the mind, which has on account of its cares becomes red hot, with the mind, which is like iron sharpened by the study of scriptures. O Raghava, what have you to do with this inert and dumb body? Why do you felt helpless and miserable by joys and sorrows on account of it? What a vast difference between the flesh, blood, etc., and you, the embodiment of consciousness. Even after knowing this, why do you not abandon the idea of self in this body? The mere knowledge that this body is like a piece of wood or a clod of earth enables one to realize the Supreme Self. How strange that while the real Brahman is forgotten by man, the unreal called avidya appears very real to them. It is again strange that while the Supreme Brahman is forgotten by man, the idea this is mine called avidya is firmly held by them. When you do your work, do it without attachment, even as a crystal which reflects the objects before it. The conviction that everything is Brahman leads one to liberation, therefore rejects entire the idea of duality, which is ignorance. Reject it entirely. If you separate yourself from the body and abide at ease in consciousness, you will become one. Everything else appear like grass. After knowing that by which you know this world, turn the mind inward, and then you will see clearly the effulgence of the self. O Raghava, that by which you recognize sound, taste, form, and smell, know that as yourself the Supreme Brahman, the Lord of Lords. O Raghava, that in which beings vibrate, that which creates them, know that self to be your real self. After rejecting through reasoning all that can be known as non-truth, which remains as pure consciousness, regard that as your real self. Knowing is not separate from you, and that which is known is not separate from knowledge. Hence, there is nothing other than the self, nothing separate from it. All that Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, Indra, and other always do is done by me, the embodiment of consciousness. Think in this manner. I am the whole universe. I am the undecaying Supreme Self. There is neither past nor future apart from me. Reflect in this manner. Everything is the one Brahman, pure consciousness, the self of all, indivisible and immutable. Reflect in this manner. There is neither I nor any other thing, nor only Brahman exists, always full of bliss everywhere. Meditate on this calmly. The sense of perceiver and perceived is common to all embodied beings, but the yogi worships the one self. When the assemblage of body, senses, etc., acts of its own accord, there arises an idea I am this. This is the jiva, ego, stained by the dirt of ignorance. When the conviction that everything is the space like consciousness becomes firm, the jiva comes to an end like a lamp without oil. Like a misguided Brahman who abandons his own nobility and adopts the life of a Shudra, the Lord assumes the role of the jiva. Just as a child sees an apparition created by its own fancy, so also the stupid jiva creates on account of delusion this unreal body and sees it as separate from him. A child superimposes a real elephant on a clay elephant and plays with it. Even so, an ignorant man superimposes the body, etc., on the self and carries on his activities. The picture of a snake doesn't cause fear of a snake when it is realized to be only a picture. Similarly, when the Jiva snake is clearly understood, there is neither misery nor the cause of misery. The snake superimposed on a garland merges in it, so also the sense of separateness rising from the self merges in the self. Although bracelets etc. appear to be many as gold, they are one. Similarly, although the adjuncts are many, the self is really one. Like the organs of the body and modifications of clay, non-duality appears as duality in the form of the moving and unmoving objects. Just as a single face is reflected as many in a crystal, in water, or in ghee, or in a mirror, so also the self is reflected in the intellects. Just as the sky is stained by dust, smoke, and clouds, so also the pure self is in contact with the qualities of Maya, soiled by them. Just as a metal in contact with fire acquires the quality of fire, so also the senses etc. in contact with the self acquire the quality of the self. Just as the invisible Rahu becomes visible when it is seized by the moon, comes in the contact with the moon, even so the self is known by experiencing objects of perception. When water and fire come together, they acquire the qualities of each other. Even so, when the self and the inert body come together, the self looks like the non-self and the non-self looks like the self. Just as fire thrown in a large sheet of water loses its quality, so also consciousness in contact with the unreal and the inert seems to lose its real nature and becomes inert. The self is realized in the body only with effort, like sugar from the sugar cane, oil from sesame seeds, fire from wood, flutter from a cow, and iron from stones. Like the sky seen an unbroken crystal, the Supreme Lord of the nature of consciousness is seen in all objects. Just as a big lamp kept inside a vessel made a precious stone illumines by its light both outside and inside, so also the one self illumines. Just as the sun reflection in a mirror illumines, so also the reflection of the self in pure intellects illumines. That in which this wonderful universe appears like a snake in a robe is the eternal luminous self. The self is without beginning or end, it is immutable existence and consciousness, it manifests space, it is source of the jiva and higher than the highest. The self is pure consciousness, eternal, omnipresent, immutable, and self effulgent like the light of the sun. The omnipresent self, the substratum of all, is non indifferent different from the effulgent consciousness. Like heat from fire, it can only be experienced, not known. Pure consciousness without intellect, the Supreme Self, the illuminator of all the indivisible, pervading within and without, is firm support of all. The Self is absolute consciousness, it is pure awareness, undecaying, free from all ideas of acceptance or rejection, and not limited by space, time. Just as the air in the universe pervades everything, so also the Self, the Lord, abides bodiless in everything. The consciousness which exists in the expanse of earth, in the ornament, in the sky, and in the sun, exists also inside the worms lying in their shells under the earth. There is neither bondage nor liberation, neither duality nor non-duality, there is only Brahm, always shining as consciousness. Awareness is Brahm, The world is Brahm, the various elements are Brahm, I am Brahm, my enemy is Brahm, my friend and relatives are Brahm. The idea of a consciousness and an object of consciousness is bondage. Freedom from it is liberation. Consciousness, the object of consciousness, and everything else is the self. This is the gist of all systems of philosophy. There is only consciousness here. The universe is nothing but consciousness. You are consciousness, I am consciousness, the worlds are consciousness. That is the conclusion. That which exists and which shines is known to exist are all the self. Anything else which seems to shine doesn't exist. Consciousness alone shines by itself. Ideas of knower and known are idle postulates. Supreme bliss cannot be experienced through contact of the sense with their objects. The supreme state is that in which the mind is annihilated through one-pointed enquiry. The bliss arising from the contact of the senses with their objects is inferior. Contact with the sense objects is bondage. Freedom from it is liberation. Attain the pure state between existence and non-existence and hold on it. Do not accept or reject the inner or the outer world. Depend always on what that true reality between the sentient and the inert, which is the infinite space like heart. The belief in a knower and the known is called bondage. The knower is bound by the known. He is liberated when there is nothing to know. Abandoning the ideas of seer, seen, and sight, along with latent desires of the past, we meditate on that self, which is the primal light, that is the basis of sight. We meditate on the eternal self, the light of lights, which lies between the two ideas of existence and non-existence. We meditate on the self of consciousness, the bestower of the fruits of all our thoughts, the illuminator of all radiant objects, and the farthest limit of all accepted objects. We meditate on that immutable self, our reality, the bliss of which arises in the mind on account of the close contact between the seer and the seen. If one meditates on the state which comes at the end of a waking state and the beginning of sleep, he will directly experience undecaying bliss, the rock-like state in which all thoughts and are still and which is different from the waking and dream states, is one's supreme state. Like mud in a mud pot, the Supreme Lord, which is existence and space, like consciousness and bliss, exist everywhere, known separate from things. The self shines by itself as the one boundless ocean of consciousness, agitated by waves of thought. Just as the ocean is nothing but water, the entire world of things is nothing but consciousness, filling all the quarters like a infinite space. Brahman, the space are alike as to their invisibility, all pervasiveness and indestructibility, but Brahman is also consciousness. There is only the one waveless and profound ocean of pure nectar, sweet through and through everywhere. All this is truly Brahm, all this is Atma. Do not cut up Brahm into I am the one thing and this is another. As soon as it is realized that Brahm is all pervasive and indivisible, this vast samsara is found to be the Supreme Lord. One who realizes that everything is Brahm truly becomes Brahm, who would not become immortal if he were to drink nectar. If you are wise, You would become this by such conviction, if not even if you are repeatedly told it would be thrown on ashes. Even if you have known the real truth, you have to practice always. Water will not become clear by merely uttering the word katka fruit. If one has the firm conviction, I am the Supreme Self, called the undecaying Vasudeva, he is liberated, otherwise he remains bound. After eliminating everything as not this, the Supreme Being which cannot be eliminated remains. Think I am that and be happy. Know always that the Self is Brahm, one and whole. How can that which is indivisible to divided into I am the meditator and the other is the object of meditation? When one thinks I am pure consciousness, it is called meditation, and when even the idea of meditation is forgotten, it is samadhi. The constant flow of mental concept relating to Brahm without the sense of I achieved through intense practice of self-enquiry is what is called Samprajnata Samadhi, meditation with concepts. Let violent winds which characterize the end of kalpas blow, let all the ocean unite, let the 12 sun burn simultaneously, still no harm befalls one whose mind is extinct. The consciousness which is the witness of the rise and fall of all beings know that to be the immortal state of supreme bliss. Every moving or unmoving thing whatsoever is only an object visualized by the mind. When the mind is annihilated, duality is not perceived. That which is immutable, auspicious and tranquil, that in which this world exists, that which manifests itself as a mutable and immutable object, that is the soul consciousness. Before discarding the slow, the snake regards it as itself, but when once it has discarded it in its whole, it doesn't look upon it as itself any longer. He who has transcended both good and evil doesn't, like a child, refrain from prohibited acts from a sense of sin, nor does he do what is prescribed from a sense of merit. Just as a statue is contained in a pillar, even if it is not actually carved out, so also the world exists in Brahm. Therefore, the supreme state is not a void. Just as a pillar is said to be devoid of the statue when it has not actually been carved out, so also Brahm is also to be void when it is devoid of the impression of the world. Just as a still water may be said to contain or not contain ripples, so also Brahm may be said to contain or not contain the world. It is neither void nor existence. Hari Om Tat Sat.